The containment room smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt aluminum. Bright ceiling lights reflected off the smooth metallic walls, casting a sterile glow over everything. Isaac Trenner sat upright on the examination table, his left arm braced in a sling, his ribs tightly wrapped beneath his shirt, and his face bearing the bruises of a recent and very unexpected encounter with an alien centrifuge chamber. "Don't move yet," said Varnak, the lead xenobiologist of the Cyrene delegation. The alien's voice buzzed slightly, like a wasp caught in a bottle. Varnak's 3 eyes flicked from Isaac's arm to the blood sample capsule now sealed in the diagnostic centrifuge. Isaac exhaled, wincing as his ribs protested. "I'm not going anywhere, trust me." Varnak adjusted the settings on the machine with one of his 6 fingers. "Your blood, it coagulated differently than expected. We ran the standard class 3 analysis and the stabilizers, they melted through the tray," Isaac finished for him. "Yes, precisely, that should not be possible." Isaac leaned his head back against the cool wall. "Welcome to Earth biology." Varnak tilted his head. "Your species is not listed as hazardous." "Well, we are now, apparently." The incident had started 3 days earlier, aboard the Cyrene research vessel Kellen Drift, after Isaac, a xenomedical technician from Earth, was invited to join an interspecies medical exchange program. His specialty was virology and immune response. He never expected the first thing he'd be explaining to an alien crew was why his blood had just corroded a reinforced containment tray. The centrifuge beeped. The humming stopped. Varnak retrieved the capsule with a pair of insulated graspers and placed it on the sterile counter. He examined the readout. His posture stiffened and his back sensors fluttered. "This is abnormal," Isaac shifted. "Bad abnormal or science fair winner abnormal. The hemochromatic proteins in your blood are actively adapting to the chemical stabilizers. That's not how blood is supposed to behave. It's mutating." "No," Isaac corrected. "It's responding. That's not a mutation." "That's what my immune system does. Yours probably does it too, just slower." Varnak didn't respond. He slid the capsule into a secondary scanner and tapped a sequence on the interface. The capsule hissed, releasing a puff of vapor, then began a new analysis. Isaac watched as the alien's body language grew increasingly tense. "Something else. The sample is breaking down the containment seals. Again." Isaac blinked. "Seriously?" Varnak stepped back. "We need a containment field, level 6. Now, a side hatch opened and a second Cyrene technician, Merva, entered, her torso shifting with alarm. "What's going on?" she asked, antennae twitching. "Human blood, it's destabilizing our equipment. Again." Merva froze, staring at Isaac. "Is he injured?" "Yeah," Isaac said before Varnak could answer. "Fractured arm, cracked ribs, bruised kidney. I fell into a diagnostics array when the stabilizer tray exploded. Not my best landing." Varnak turned to Merva. "Inform the medical director. We need full quarantine procedures." "No more testing without reinforcement." Isaac raised an eyebrow. "Wait a minute, I've been on this ship for 2 weeks. You've taken blood samples before. Why now?" Varnak's lower arms folded inward, a sign of concentration. "Previous samples were drawn under different environmental conditions. Lower stress states, no trauma. This sample was taken post-injury. It's possible the biological response is linked to stress-induced adaptation." Isaac's jaw tightened. "You're saying my blood went crazy because I got hurt, not crazy, highly reactive." "Aggressively defensive." Merva looked at Isaac like he'd grown a second head. "Your blood is fighting our containment tech." Isaac rubbed his temple. "I knew taking that 3rd booster was a bad idea." The ship's medical director, a towering Valeri named Threx, arrived minutes later. He didn't speak immediately, just stared at the melting tray and the flickering scanner, then at Isaac. "Was this intentional?" he asked flatly. Isaac looked insulted. "You think I weaponized my own bloodstream?" Threx didn't answer. He turned to Varnak. "Quarantine the lab, isolate the human. No further samples without my approval." Isaac stood a little too fast and staggered. Varnak caught him. "I'm not contagious if that's what you're worried about." "We're not worried about contagion," Threx said. "We're worried about containment. Your biology is unstable under trauma conditions." "That makes you a hazard." Isaac's expression hardened. That's not instability, it's resilience. Threx narrowed his eyes. Resilience that melts equipment is not resilience, it's a liability. It took 3 hours for the lab to be sterilized. In the meantime, Isaac was moved to a reinforced medbay, surrounded by a level 6 containment field and watched by 2 armed security officers. He spent the first night staring at the ceiling, wondering how a simple lab accident had turned into diplomatic tension. The next morning, Merva returned, holding a new set of reinforced vials. "We developed these overnight," she said, setting them on the table. "Titanium alloyed glass, triple seal, internal cooling buffer, they should hold." Isaac eyed them cautiously. "Is this really necessary?" "Yes," Merva said. "We ran simulations. Your blood under distress conditions reaches temperatures 30% above safe containment limits. The protein chains reorganize themselves mid-analysis. That doesn't happen with any other species." Isaac sighed. "So you're saying I'm special?" "I'm saying we don't understand you. That's worse." The new tests were conducted under heavy supervision. The blood samples were taken while Isaac was sedated to reduce stress variables. Even so, the results were baffling. His blood reacted differently depending on his emotional state, physical trauma, and even proximity to electromagnetic fields. It defied categorization. 3 days later, a delegation arrived from the Coalition's Central Medical Board. They requested a demonstration. Isaac sat in the reinforced chair as Merva prepared the draw. "You sure about this? They want to see it firsthand," he grimaced as the needle went in. "This is going to get weird." The moment the sample hit the scanner, the same phenomena occurred. The seals began to warp. The readouts fluctuated wildly. One of the delegates stepped back, his voice tight. "This is not standard immune response. This is reactive defense. This is engineered." Isaac looked up. "Engineered or evolved. Either way, your species is not ready for integration." "You're still adapting." There was a long silence. Isaac looked around the room, the flickering lights of the scanner casting uneven shadows. "I'm not a danger," he said quietly. "I'm just human." Varnak looked at him. "And that is exactly why you are a danger." The declaration led to an emergency review. Human participation in the exchange program was suspended. Earth's biology was reclassified from unremarkable to high-risk adaptive. All further blood testing was put under strict containment protocols. Isaac spent 3 more weeks aboard the Kellen Drift, recovering from his injuries and answering endless questions. Each test brought more confusion. His blood responded to variables even the scientists hadn't accounted for. The final report was over 400 pages long. It concluded with a single sentence that made its way into every interstellar medical training syllabus. Human blood, when exposed to trauma conditions, should be tested with extreme caution due to its unpredictable reactivity and biochemical adaptability. Isaac eventually returned to Earth. He declined further participation in off-world programs, but the story followed him. And somewhere in the cold, quiet labs of alien worlds, reinforced vials with triple seals and fusion-welded caps sat waiting, labeled in bold red letters. Handle only under level 6 containment. Human blood sample testing protocols had changed forever. Not out of fear, but respect. The lights in observation chamber 12 were dimmed to minimize photonic interference. Varnak adjusted the biothermal regulators on his left wrist as he peered through the transparent barrier. Isaac sat alone inside the chamber, bare-chested, electrodes mapped across his skin, his right hand gripping a stress bar designed for Cathari musculature entirely too firm for human fingers, yet Isaac had insisted. "Ready." Merva's voice came through the audio channel. Isaac didn't look up. "I've been ready since breakfast. You guys were the ones dragging your tentacles." "I don't have tentacles," Merva replied. "That's biologically inaccurate. Then I've been lied to by every alien anatomy chart I studied in grad school." Varnak leaned closer to the console, watching the real-time readouts. "Begin muscular strain sequence. Moderate exertion. No stimulant triggers." Inside the chamber, Isaac began to flex the bar. His heartbeat ticked up. Sweat started to bead on his forehead. "No painkillers today?" he asked. "None," Merva confirmed. We need unmedicated baselines. Fantastic. Just what I wanted from my Tuesday. The bar creaked faintly as Isaac gritted his teeth and twisted harder. One of the surface electrodes lifted slightly from the tension. Varnak noted the spike in hemoglobin behavior. It wasn't just adapting, it anticipated. Merva tapped a secondary console. Localized inflammation is triggering protein folding before cell damage occurs. That's not reactive, Varnak said. That's predictive. He turned to the assistant standing behind them. Record that phrasing, full cycle documentation. 2 minutes in, Isaac dropped the bar, panting. How's that for a workout? Your blood began reconfiguring before your muscles reached strain threshold, Merva said. I'll take that as a compliment. Varnak opened the intercom. We'll need a tissue sample. Isaac gave a flat stare. From where? Biceps region. You've already induced enough stress for analysis. Great. Just cut a slice out while you're at it. Merva entered the chamber with a sterilizer and a microbiopsy tool. Isaac didn't flinch as she extracted a narrow core of muscle tissue. She placed it in a sealed transport vial and rejoined Varnak in the observation zone. The tissue was rushed to the Level 6 lab for sequencing. 3 hours later, a silent alert blinked on the central monitor. Unscheduled replication event, Merva announced. Varnak stared at the screen. That's not possible without mitogenic activation. The sample is ex vivo. It's duplicating genetic structures without external stimuli. It's self-stabilizing. That shouldn't happen. Isaac, now dressed and seated on the bench outside the chamber, leaned toward the glass. Should I be worried that my cells are building a second me? Varnak didn't answer. He was already adjusting the scan range. The tissue had begun forming microcapillaries, rudimentary, incomplete, but unmistakably vascular. The growth halted after 10 minutes, then reabsorbed itself. No energy input, no external nutrients. Merva tapped the console. This kind of behavior would normally indicate engineered regeneration, but there's no vector, no viral override. It's not engineered, Varnak said. It's innate. Isaac folded his arms. So I'm a walking science project again. Terrific. Varnak looked up. Have you ever experienced unusually fast healing? I once got a paper cut that closed before I could find a bandage. Is that what you mean? That's not normal. I'm not surprised anymore. Merva pulled up the previous day's scans and ran a side-by-side comparison. There's a difference in cytokine behavior. Yesterday's samples showed a standard post-trauma response. Today's are preemptively modulating inflammation. Varnak's brow ridges flexed. Then it's not just blood, it's full-body adaptation, every system. Isaac rubbed his shoulder. Are you about to tell me I'm banned from donating plasma forever? No. You're banned from bleeding on anything we don't want partially digested. An emergency call came through from the engineering deck. One of the assistant techs, Solek, a junior systems analyst, had collapsed after exposure to Isaac's waste sample, which had been improperly handled during disposal. Varnak and Merva arrived at the medbay 8 minutes later. Solek lay on a containment table, his skin an unnatural shade of blue-gray, his breathing shallow. Exposure, Varnak asked. Trace contaminants from the human's biological waste. He was cleaning the sample port without gloves. Why weren't protocols followed? He assumed the sample had been neutralized. Merva scanned the readouts. This is not toxicity, it's system confusion. His blood enzymes are mimicking human immunoproteins. His body is treating his own cells as foreign. Isaac stood just outside the threshold. I didn't even touch him. You didn't have to, Varnak said. Your waste carried enough adaptive protein residue to initiate a response cascade. The medtech injected a stabilizer. Solek's vitals began to recover. Isaac looked away. So now I'm hazardous by proximity. You're hazardous by complexity, Varnak replied. Later that day, Isaac was moved to a new containment unit. Not for quarantine this time, it was for study. A full-body adaptive scan was scheduled. No sedatives permitted, no electrical interference. They needed the data raw. He lay flat on the diagnostic slab as the scanner passed over him layer by layer. Hold perfectly still, Merva instructed. I'm not moving, Isaac muttered. Just trying not to think about the fact that every scan like this ends with someone fainting or evacuating the lab. 20 minutes into the scan, the machine halted. Why'd it stop? Isaac asked. It didn't stop, Merva said. It crashed. Varnak checked the diagnostics. The machine's onboard system is reporting recursive feedback. Your internal biochemistry is altering in response to the scan frequencies. Isaac sat up. So I'm reacting to being looked at. More accurately, your body is adapting to the perception of threat. You're not just reacting, you're anticipating stimuli and reorganizing protein structures before exposure completes. That's ridiculous. It's happening. They restarted the scan using a different frequency band. Same result. Merva turned to Varnak. He's rewriting his response patterns in real time. We need to stop, Isaac said. You're not going to get consistent data. My body's treating every scan like it's a new opponent. Merva looked at him. You sound like you're describing a sentient immune system. Isaac shrugged. Aren't all immune systems kind of sentient? Yours might be. That evening, a diplomatic courier arrived from the Coalition's bioethics division. He handed Varnak a sealed document. Merva read it aloud. Effective immediately, all human biological materials are to be classified under Tier 4 reactive biohazards. No unsupervised testing. No disposal without molecular disintegration. Full consent protocols required for all further research. Isaac sat on the edge of the medbay cot, lacing his boots. So I'm officially toxic. Great. You're not toxic, Varnak said. You're incompatible with standard assumptions. That's a delicate way of saying no one knows what I'll do next. That's exactly what it means. He stood. So what now? I go home with a warning label. You go home with an advisory. And a dossier thicker than the ship's manual. Isaac looked around the lab. The reinforced vials, the filtered vents, the redundant seals. You know, I used to think it was a miracle humans survived Earth's environment. Merva tilted her head. It still is, but now we understand why. You didn't just survive it, you bent to it, and then made it bend to you. Isaac smiled faintly. We always did have a thing for stubbornness. Which is why, Varnak added, your blood will remain the most studied substance in Coalition medical history. As Isaac stepped into the transport chamber bound for the diplomatic shuttle, he paused. Next time someone asks what makes humans unique, he said, tell them it's not our minds, it's our refusal to break the same way twice. The door sealed behind him with a hiss. Varnak turned to Merva. Begin cataloging the scans. Start with the muscle tissue. Work outward. And the blood, store it under triple containment, then delete the replication algorithm. No simulations. Why? Because we don't know what happens if it learns what we're doing. The internal climate of the Coalition Research Annex on Biral Station was adjusted to accommodate 23 different respiratory needs. Isaac sat alone in a chair designed for species with no spine, watching a maintenance drone buzz overhead as it sealed the last of the decontamination vents. A dull ache throbbed in his leg where the biopsy probe had snagged a nerve sheath the day before. He hadn't mentioned it. He doubted anyone would touch him again unless it was through a wall. He'd been requested again for final clearance testing before his departure. Not because they needed more samples. They had more than enough. This was a diplomatic formality, a box to tick, a final courtesy to the Coalition before Earth's medical participation was paused indefinitely. Thank you for returning, said the being entering the room. It stood nearly twice Isaac's height, with a translucent carapace and too many knees. Its name was Dr. Riloon, head of the Coalition's Biocompatibility Authority and the first of its kind to directly handle a human subject. Isaac leaned back, arms folded. Didn't realize I had a choice. You could have refused the final round. But you didn't. I wanted to see who they'd send after they ran out of people with circulatory systems. Riloon's mandibles clicked faintly. It lowered itself into a fluid-supported seat, its lower limbs folding into a rest position. We've reviewed the full cascade logs. Your physiology does not express standard boundaries. It bubbles. I don't think that's a medical term. It is now. A second figure entered, shorter, with a limbless body suspended in a hover harness. Its skin was covered in chromatophores that pulsed soft green. Isaac recognized the species Tessari. Their nervous systems were distributed across more than a dozen clusters. The Tessari extended a device the size of a plum. This is a neuro-emotive reader. We're not scanning your thoughts. Just monitoring how your body responds to emotional variants. Isaac took the device and strapped it onto his forearm. You're going to run me through a therapy session, Close, said Riloon. We're going to show you images, nothing dangerous, just evocative. The overhead lights dimmed and the walls around Isaac shimmered, a projection activated, filling the room with a panoramic display. The first image was a field of wheat under storm clouds. The air in the room smelled faintly of ozone and wet soil. Looks like Kansas, Isaac muttered. The neuro-emotive reader pinged softly. The display changed, a hospital room, Earth-standard equipment, a child in a bed bandaged smiling weakly at someone just out of frame. Isaac's shoulders stiffened. Next, he said, the image shifted to a burning vehicle on a rain-slick road. The neuro-reader chimed again, this time twice. Are you trying to upset me or just see what breaks first? We're observing the systemic shifts in your blood chemistry during memory triggers, Riloon replied. Your body is altering long-chain proteins in response to emotional stimuli. I'm aware, Isaac said. I lived it. The Tessari adjusted the projection. Now a battlefield, not Earth, but similar. Mud, smoke. A human dragging another through the dirt. The wounded man's leg was gone below the knee. Isaac didn't speak. The reader went silent. We expected a spike, Riloon said, but your heart rate dropped. I was there, Isaac said. The Tessari's skin dimmed. You recognize this? That was second Mars deployment. We lost 12. I pulled Price out of the crater myself. He lived. Riloon tapped a sequence into a console. Your blood pressure stabilized during that memory. No inflammation markers, no stress enzymes. I've already processed it. Your resilience is not physiological alone, Riloon said. It's cognitive. The projection ended. The lights returned. Isaac exhaled slowly, blinking against the change. So what does that mean? He asked. You going to build a therapy program out of my trauma? We're not building anything, Riloon said. We're trying to understand how your internal environment functions without destroying the platforms we use to study it. The Tessari hovered closer. Your body is not just reacting to damage, it's learning. It remembers trauma biochemically and then builds resistance into the next response. Isaac stood, flexing his leg. So I'm a walking feedback loop. You're an adaptive archive, Riloon corrected. And that makes you incomparable. I thought that already disqualified us. From unsupervised integration, yes, but not from study. Isaac rubbed his jaw. You're not going to ask for more blood, are you? Because I'm fresh out of arm real estate. No, Riloon said. We're releasing you. The door behind them hissed open. Merva stood on the threshold, wearing a containment-rated suit, her eyes shielded by polarized lenses. Transport's prepped, she said. Sealed cabin, independent life support, no contact protocols. Isaac followed her into the corridor. The walk was silent for several minutes. They passed no other researchers. The hallways had been cleared. I heard about Solek, Isaac said. He's recovering, Merva replied. He's still confused about how he started mimicking your antibody sequences. Tell him I didn't mean to. He knows. They reached the docking bay. The transport was already powered, its engines humming at low idle. Merva handed him a small case sealed with a biometric lock. What's this? Your medical file. Full record. Coalition encrypted. You're the only one who can open it. Isaac tucked the case under his arm. You're not worried I'll try to sell it. You couldn't. No one else could survive the exposure. He turned to her. You really think we're dangerous? Merva hesitated. You're not dangerous. You're inconsistent. That's worse. Isaac smiled faintly. We adapt. That's what we do. We noticed. He climbed aboard, the hatch sealed behind him. Through the viewport, he watched Merva retreat into the shadows of the bay, her suit gleaming under the emergency lights. The cabin was quiet. No crew. Just automated systems and a destination preloaded into the navcore. As the transport undocked, Isaac leaned back in the padded seat and opened the biometric case. Inside was a single data crystal and a handwritten note on synthetic paper. This isn't a warning, it's an apology. We built our science on predictability. You reminded us that survival isn't logical. Sometimes it's just stubborn. He closed the case and set it beside him. Outside the viewport, the stars slowly shifted as the ship aligned with the jump corridor. No alarms, no containment fields, just silence. And somewhere, in a dozen laboratories across the coalition, reinforced cabinets now held the last samples of Isaac's blood sealed, locked, and labeled with words no one had ever expected to write. Human sample. Do not simulate, do not replicate, do not expose to stress conditions. Science had adjusted, carefully, and humanity, as ever, had left a bruise.